This is John McAfee, and he's lived one hell of a life. He's the creator of the McAfee antivirus software, but that's the least interesting thing about him. That's because in 2012, his Central American jungle compound was raided by Belize's gang suppression unit because they thought he was cooking up meth. Then 6 months later, he became an international fugitive after his neighbor was found dead and he was named as the lead suspect. Following a media shitstorm, he was arrested by Interpol in Guatemala for illegally entering the country.
Where are they taking you, John?
To jail.
With some quick thinking, he managed to escape being deported back to Belize by faking a heart attack. This gave his lawyer enough time to file an appeal so he can return to the United States instead. Now, if that sounds crazy, and it does, get this.
Bro, come on. Like, he's just... I mean, he's a monster as an individual, okay? But, like, also... I mean, he's just fucking... He's a deranged psycho who is... Like, how are you not gonna watch what he does next? You know what I mean?
A couple of years later, he ran for president.
All right, so is it official? Are you running for president? Have you filed the papers to run for president?
I filed the papers on Tuesday. I'm officially running, yes, ma'am.
People say libertarians are isolationists.
That intro barely scratches the surface of the absolute insanity that has been John McAfee's life. Okay, let me give you the who, what, where, when, and why in as little words as possible. So he was born in England on September 18th, 1945. A little while later, his family moved to Roanoke, Virginia. He did a degree in mathematics at Roanoke College. Then he started working for a string of tech companies and government agencies. NASA, Xerox, Booz Allen Hamilton, to name a few. He's constantly losing jobs during this time because of drugs and booze. For example, he was selling coke and snorting it while at Omex. He adds that he lost his job at Missouri Pacific Railroad after showing up to work after doing a whole bag of DMT. Oh yeah, there's this great clip of him talking about how he got his job at Lockheed Martin. I'm gonna play it for you.
That they gave you security clearance, I guess, because you had nothing to hide.
Right. Because I'd had a very checkered past prior to joining Lockheed Martin. I assumed that there would be no chance in hell I would ever get security clearance. They asked me very, revealing questions. Had I ever had sex with sheep or dogs? I mean, incredible things. Had I ever taken drugs? The answer was yes. What kind? Almost every kind. How much? A lot. Have you ever sold drugs? Yes. So I assumed I'd never get the clearance, but I did, and it came in very quickly.
During the mid-1980s, he read about the first known PC virus.
I don't... Did he actually work at Lockheed Martin? I mean, I guess you could... Because, like, to work as a defense contractor for the American government, he's not wrong. Like, they ask you insane questions, but I fucking doubt that he was able to get security clearance. Like, that's crazy. I guess they don't give a fuck when you're, like, literally, actually, unironically a genius. He's still white, though? No, you guys are crazy, dude. They only care if you lie? No, part of the reason why they care about the security clearance is because they want you to make sure, they want to make sure that you're not compromised, okay? Or that you could be compromised. And I guess the reason why they were like, yeah, we don't give a fuck is because, like, he admits to it. So he doesn't even need to, he will never be compromised if he openly admits it. You know what I mean? Yeah, this chatter is correct. You get security clearance if you don't lie and can't be exploited. And I guess he can't be exploited because he's just like, yeah, fuck yeah, I sold drugs and I fucked the sheep or whatever the fuck. But also, most importantly, someone with that level, like someone with that kind of a background is not getting a security clearance if, unless they are like legitimately like unique. Like they are going to bring a tremendous amount of value by working there.
Virus called the Pakistani Brain. Then he hired a few programmers and they put together an antivirus software for him. He called it Virus Scan. At the time, he was running an online BBS called Homebase, and he gave Virus Scan away for free to Homebase users. For free, you say? How did he make money? Well, he's a crafty dude, so he added fine print stipulating that corporations had to pay for a licensing fee. He had a hunch that people would install his software onto their computers at work, and he was right. Soon he was getting more checks from companies than he had time to cash out. His next step was to establish established McAfee Associates. To market his business, he appeared on news programs talking about the dangers viruses pose to the financial stake of the nation's largest companies. Lots of doomsday stuff. His big break came in 1991, and it was thanks to the Michelangelo virus.
When you're looking for a biological virus, you use a microscope or some other laboratory device to try and identify the virus. But when you're looking for a computer
Didn't he literally make some viruses as well? I mean,
virus, it's even more difficult because you can't see it at all.
Computer users won't be joining in all the celebrations for Michelangelo's birthday this Friday because on that day, a new and deadly virus is scheduled to strike computers around the world.
So how does the virus infect your computer? Well, it hitches a ride on a floppy disk. What you're about to see is Michelangelo destroying 80 megabytes of data, 80 million bits of information. This American student, Robert Morris, is one of the few virus authors who've been caught and convicted.
Typically, these are antisocial people with a severe emotional problem, and their
I mean, he ain't wrong about that.
creations are getting more difficult to detect and more destructive all the time.
So what's going to happen tomorrow? Nobody knows.
Well, what do you do if you think this might happen to your computer?
The Michelangelo virus was discovered in Australia. It was a boot sector virus that operated at the BIOS level of DOS system.
Oh my god, this dude is the most Canadian dude I have ever seen, dude. My man literally said a boot. Like he's... Wow. That is the most Canadian person on the planet. Wait, oh, he said the boot sector? Did I misunderstand what he was saying?
The virus was discovered in Australia. It was a boot sector virus that operated...
Oh my god, I thought... I gotta take a break from streaming. I swear to God, my processes is not functioning anymore. My brain literally has stopped functioning in this past week. I don't know what it is. I don't know what it is. I cannot fucking hear things. No, I will not apologize to Canada. A boot is something that Canadians say, but he said a boot sector virus. It's over. It's over for me. I think my brain no longer works.
At the BIOS level of DOS systems. It was designed to lay dormant until it would strike on the 6th of March, on the same day as the famous artist's birthday. McAfee prophesied that the virus could destroy as many as 5 million computers around the world. But once March 6th arrived, only 10 to 20,000 computers were reported as infected. As a result, McAfee was taken to task by the press and by his colleagues. Although he cried wolf, it paid off. 6 months later, his revenues increased tenfold, and he controlled 67% of the antivirus market. However, the investors wanted him out. The thing is, the guy was a great marketer, but dog shit as a CEO. At McAfee Associates, sex contests, sword fights, and Wiccan ceremonies were the norm, and the company's spirit was a reflection of John's. Anyway, by 1992, the investors wanted to take the company to the next level, so they replaced him as CEO. Later, he cashed out for $100 million. By the way, if he just waited, he could have made quadruple that. That's because McAfee Associates eventually sold for $7 billion. Other than creating a before-its-time chat program called Powwow, the rest of the 90s were a relatively quiet period for John McAfee. Okay, so, by the 2000s, his life starts to get progressively more weird. All of a sudden, he decided to become a yoga guru. He opened a yoga and meditation retreat in his 10,000 square foot, $25 million Colorado's Rocky Mansion. There he housed 200 loyal disciples completely for free.
There's a really good documentary that covers all of this stuff that we just saw extensively, by the way. Like all of this. It is really, even this part that he's like breezing through are very interesting.
And based off what I've read about it, the whole thing screams cult-like to me.
Need. And jealousy is all about the fear of losing all of these pleasant things which you have obtained.
He wrote 4 books during this time, although he later denounced all of them as trash. By 2003, he became bored of the life of a spirituality guru, so he decided to invent a sport.
Are these your very favorite toys?
I would say so.
In McAfee's case, that meant millions he spent promoting the sport of aerotrekking, tiny motorized kites that enthusiasts fly to explore the remotest corners of the country, For them, McAfee built this playground in the desert.
Within 4 years, he spent more than $11 million building a massive aero-trekking wonderland. There he built 4 airplane hangars, 2 airstrips, a 5-bedroom villa, a cafe, internet lounge, greenhouse, and an organic goods store. Additionally, the village was home to his collection of vintage cars worth an estimated $400,000. On top of all of that, he built a network of 8 airports connecting remote areas of New Mexico to Arizona. He also established a flight school, which was at the center of a wrongful death lawsuit that caused the whole thing to come crashing down. This happened after his 22-year-old nephew, Joel Gordon Patow, flew into a canyon wall with a 61-year-old student named Robert Gilson. Gilson's family later sued McAfee for $5 million in a wrongful death lawsuit. They argued that McAfee was liable because he made Patow an instructor, even though he didn't have a pilot's license and only had about 65 hours of flight training.
Okay, listen. This is literally at the heart of libertarianism. Like, he literally thinks like these sorts of regulatory burdens are just over encroachments from the nanny state, okay? This is what I mean when I say, here is a man who lived by libertarian principles all the fucking way. This is your brain on libertarianism.
Training. After another lawsuit from a man who tripped on his property, McAfee devised a plan to escape from his legal troubles. So in 2008, he announced to the media that he was broke.
John McAfee, like many people in the country, got hooked on flipping properties for profit. With a fortune reported to be in excess of $100 million, he got sucked into the greatest real estate bubble the United States has ever seen.
I bought some properties in Utah and,
brilliant, by the way.
Doubled and tripled my money in a matter of months. And I go, well, sure, you can make money at this.
His passion for real estate became all-consuming as McAfee amassed a trove of high-end properties across the U.S.
You were doing what everybody else was doing, only on a larger dollar scale.
Yes, spent an enormous amount of money building things which really had no utility other than possibly as art. So it's house as art, which in a booming economy you might actually be able to sell and make some money. But in a recession,
he sold everything he owned on his massive aero-trekking complex in a series of highly publicized, single-day absolute auctions. Then he announced that he was moving to Belize. This was all for show. As Joshua Davis puts it, he figured that if he were out of the country, he'd be less of a target. And he knew that, should he lose a case, it would be harder to collect money if he lived overseas. So that's it for part 1. Join me for part 2 when that comes out, and potentially for part 3 and...
Okay, so to the people who are saying like, well, I like John McAfee except for the murder. One does not simply like John McAfee without the murder. You can't. It's an integral part of his personality, okay? This is it. Like, it's literally the whole, like, his entire identity revolves around doing shit like this, okay?